The unexpected law. John Carter stepped off the spaceship onto the grand marble floors of Zilfar Prime, the capital city of the alien planet Zilfar. The air smelled different here, clean, but with a strange metallic scent. Towering crystal-like buildings sparkled under the twin suns, and thousands of Ziltharians stood watching, their large glowing eyes filled with curiosity. John adjusted his Earth Diplomatic Corps badge and took a deep breath. He was here for a peace treaty, not to make history. At least, that's what he thought. A tall, silver-skinned Ziltharian named Chirax, the leader of the planet, greeted him with a respectful bow. "Welcome, John Carter of Earth. Tonight, we celebrate the first step of unity between our worlds." John nodded, offering a friendly smile. "I'm honored to be here." Little did he know, tonight would change his life forever. A grand celebration. The palace hall was enormous, with floating orbs of soft blue light illuminating the space. Exotic food was placed on golden plates. Some of it smelled delicious, while other dishes looked very, very alive. John sat at the center table with Chirax and other high-ranking Ziltharians. The crowd cheered as a ceremonial drink was brought forward in a glass-like vessel filled with shimmering golden liquid. Chirax raised his glass, a toast to unity between Zilfar and Earth. John, trying to follow their customs, lifted his glass and took a small sip. The drink was warm, almost like liquid sunlight, and he felt a pleasant sensation spreading through his body. The entire room erupted in cheers. John smiled. "Wow, that was strong." Chirax laughed. "It is the drink of bonding. You have honored us greatly." John had no idea what that meant. The confusing morning. John woke up feeling strange. The soft bed under him was unfamiliar, and the room had glowing walls that shifted colors. His head hurt slightly, but it wasn't a hangover, just a feeling that something was very, very wrong. Then he heard voices. He turned his head and froze. 4 alien women stood at the foot of his bed, all watching him with expressions ranging from curiosity to amusement. They were different from each other. One had deep violet skin with glowing blue patterns, another had emerald green eyes and golden hair, and the other 2 looked more human-like, but with extra features, like sharp ears or scaled arms. Hello," John said cautiously. The tallest of them, the one with violet skin, smiled warmly. "Good morning, husband." John sat up so fast, he nearly fell off the bed. What? A law he never knew existed. Chirax entered the room with a pleased expression. "Ah, you are awake." The ceremony was a success. John's heart pounded. What ceremony? The bonding ritual, of course. Chirax gestured toward the 4 women. "You drank the sacred drink, sealing your union with these honorable women from 4 noble Ziltharian houses." John felt his stomach drop. Hold on. You're saying I just married them?" Chirax nodded, completely serious. "Yes, it is an ancient law. By accepting the drink at a royal feast, you pledge yourself to the chosen partners. It is a great honor." John blinked rapidly, trying to process this nightmare. "But I didn't agree to this. No one told me." Chirax looked confused. "It was explained in our old language. Did your translators not interpret it correctly?" John clenched his fists. Of course, the translators missed something. One of the women, the golden-haired one, stepped forward. "Do you reject us?" Her voice was calm, but John could sense the tension in the room. Chirax's expression darkened slightly. "John Carter, refusing a bonding after the ritual is a severe offense. It would dishonor our people." John felt trapped. His diplomatic mission just turned into a political disaster. A dangerous situation. John stood up slowly, rubbing his face. "Look, I respect your customs, but on Earth, we don't marry people without agreeing first." Chirax sighed. "I understand, but this is not Earth. Here, your word, spoken or unspoken, has power." John's mind raced. If he refused outright, He could insult an entire planet. If he accepted, he was stuck in a marriage he never wanted. The golden-haired woman, still watching him closely, spoke again. You do not need to love us, but you must honor the bond. Otherwise, John swallowed. Otherwise, what? Carax's expression turned serious. Otherwise, the Ziltharian Council may see it as an act of war. John felt the world spin around him. Last night, he was just a diplomat. Now he was married to 4 alien women, and one wrong move could start an interplanetary war. This was not what he signed up for. The struggle of an unwilling husband. John Carter sat at the edge of his bed, his mind racing. The 4 alien women, his supposed wives, stood watching him with different expressions. Some seemed amused, others unreadable. His heart pounded as he tried to process the impossible situation. The golden-haired one, who had spoken before, stepped closer. I am Verena of the House of Storms, she said. We are now bonded. John rubbed his temples. Yeah, about that. I think there's been a mistake. The violet-skinned one, with glowing blue markings, raised an elegant brow. A mistake. Yes, John said, standing up. Where I come from, marriage requires both people to agree. The 4th woman, who had sharp silver eyes, tilted her head. So, you did not wish for this union? Exactly, John said, relieved that at least one of them understood. This wasn't my choice. There was a long silence. Then, Verena sighed. This is a problem, she murmured. John looked at her hopefully. So we can cancel this, right? Verena shook her head. No. A bonding, once sealed, is irrevocable. John felt the world tilt again. What? You mean I'm stuck in this? The silver-eyed one, who had been the quietest, finally spoke. Her voice was cold and sharp, like a blade cutting through the air. If you reject us, she said, the Council will not only see it as an insult, but as a betrayal. It will be considered an act of defiance against Ziltharian unity. John clenched his fists. So, I have no way out. The 3rd wife, who had dark emerald eyes, finally spoke. Her voice was soft but dangerous. You always have a choice, John Carter, she said. You can honor this bond, or you can die. John felt a cold shiver run down his spine. A political trap. John stormed out of the room, ignoring the confused stares of the palace guards, as he made his way to Charax's chamber. He didn't care about protocol anymore. He needed answers. When he arrived, the Ziltharian leader was sitting on an elevated throne, speaking with 2 other high-ranking officials. John ignored them and marched straight up. What the hell is going on? He demanded. Carax sighed, as if expecting this confrontation. John Carter, you must calm yourself. Calm myself? John's voice rose. You tricked me into marriage. Carax raised a hand. That is not true. The ritual was performed in full accordance with Ziltharian law. John gritted his teeth. Your laws don't apply to humans. You knew I wouldn't understand what was happening. Carax's expression hardened. We assumed your Earth diplomats had educated you on our customs. If they did not, that is not our fault. John felt his anger boiling over, but he forced himself to think. Yelling wouldn't help. He needed a way out. Taking a deep breath, he lowered his voice. All right, let's say I accept this for now. Why them? Why these 4 women? Carax's expression darkened. You are not just married, John Carter. You have been bound to 4 of the most powerful noble houses in Zilfar. John froze. What? These women are not ordinary. They are from houses that have been in conflict for centuries. Your union is meant to bring peace. John felt a sinking feeling in his chest. So you didn't just trick me into marriage, he muttered. You made me a political tool. Carax nodded. Yes. And now, the fate of Zilthar rests on your ability to keep this bond. John clenched his fists. This was so much worse than he thought. The assassin's strike. John staggered back toward his room, his mind racing. He needed a plan. He couldn't just go along with this. There had to be a way out. But as he reached the entrance, he noticed something off. The door to his room was slightly open. His pulse quickened. He had closed it before leaving. John carefully stepped inside, every instinct on high alert. Then, a shadow moved. John barely had time to react as a sharp blade sliced through the air toward his throat. He ducked just in time, rolling to the side as a figure cloaked in darkness lunged at him again. Adrenaline kicked in. John grabbed a nearby chair and threw it, forcing the attacker back for a second. "Who the hell are you?" John growled. The assassin didn't answer, but in the dim light, John saw something shocking. The assassin's skin was a deep shade of violet, with glowing blue patterns. His blood ran cold. It was the same markings as one of his wives. The betrayal begins. The assassin vanished into the shadows, but John knew what he saw. One of them, one of his new wives, had just tried to kill him. And now he had no idea who he could trust. Assassination attempts begin. John Carter stood frozen in the dimly lit chamber, his heartbeat pounding in his ears. The assassin had vanished, but his mind replayed the moment over and over. The glowing blue markings, the violet skin. It could only mean one thing. One of his new alien wives had just tried to kill him. He gritted his teeth, scanning the shadows, half expecting another attack. His muscles were tense, his instincts screaming at him to run. But run where? He was trapped in a palace full of strangers, bound by a law he never agreed to. And now someone wanted him dead. He needed answers. He stormed out of the room, his mind racing. If his wives were responsible, he needed to find out who and why. But first, he needed to stay alive long enough to do it. A deadly breakfast. The next morning, John sat at a grand dining table, across from his 4 alien wives. The tension in the air was thick, but none of them showed any signs of guilt. "Which one of you tried to kill me?" He kept his expression neutral, watching them carefully. Varina, the golden-haired warrior, was calm as she sipped a glowing blue liquid. She was the most diplomatic of the 4, strong, intelligent, and fiercely loyal to Zilfar. Nira, the violet-skinned one with glowing blue patterns, was seated directly across from him. Her sharp, cat-like eyes met his briefly before she looked away. Suspicious. Kayla, the emerald-eyed scientist, was the most quiet, focused on scanning a holographic tablet. She didn't seem like an assassin, but that didn't mean she wasn't involved. And then there was Syra, the silver-eyed enigma, the coldest of them all, unreadable and dangerous in her own way. She watched John like she was studying prey. John's hand hovered over his breakfast, a plate of strange alien fruits and a cup of golden liquid. His stomach growled, but something felt wrong. His eyes flicked to Nira again. She was watching him, not eating, just watching. Something clicked in his mind. John picked up his cup slowly and pretended to take a sip. At the same time, he subtly reached for a small metal spoon, dipped it in the drink, and let a few drops fall onto the floor. A second later, the liquid hissed violently, burning into the ground like acid. John's stomach turned cold. He had almost drunk poison. His gaze snapped back to Nira. She was still watching him, but this time her lips curled slightly in what looked like a smirk. John clenched his fists under the table. So it was her. But why? A secret meeting in the shadows. That night, John did something risky. Instead of confronting Nira outright, he decided to follow her. If she was working with someone, he needed evidence. He waited until the palace was quiet, then carefully made his way through the winding stone corridors, sticking to the shadows. Ahead, Nira moved swiftly and silently, her long violet robes barely making a sound. John kept his distance, his heart pounding. He had been in dangerous situations before, but this was different. This wasn't a battlefield. This was political warfare, and he was walking blind. She finally reached a hidden chamber. The doors slid open, and John caught a glimpse of something shocking. A Ziltharian warrior in dark armor, standing at attention. And then, a deep voice spoke from within. The human cannot remain in power. He is a threat to the balance of Zilfar. John's blood ran cold. This wasn't just a personal attack. This was a conspiracy. The warlord's ultimatum. Before John could process what he heard, a hand clamped over his mouth. He struggled, twisting in the grip, but whoever grabbed him was inhumanly strong. "Careful, husband," a voice whispered in his ear. "You're in very dangerous territory." John's anger flared. He yanked free and turned to see Syra, the silver-eyed wife, standing there with an unreadable expression. "You knew," he growled. Syra didn't deny it. "You're asking the wrong question, John Carter. The real question is, why haven't they killed you yet?" John stiffened. That was true. If Nura wanted him dead, why fail twice? Unless they needed him alive for now. Syra took a step closer. "You're in the middle of a war, John Carter. The moment you drank from that cup, you became a symbol of unity. But unity is dangerous. There are those who want Zilfar to remain divided. And that means—" John finished the sentence for her. "They need me gone." Syra nodded. "And they won't stop until you're either dead or a pawn in their game." John's fists clenched. He hated being used. First, they trapped him in this marriage, and now they were trying to kill him for a war he had nothing to do with. But if they thought he was just going to roll over and die, they didn't know who they were dealing with. "I need to know who's behind this," John said. "And I need to stop them before they stop me." Syra smirked slightly, her silver eyes glinting in the dim light. "Good," she said, "because the next attack won't be a warning. It will be the real one. The warlord's ultimatum." John Carter had faced impossible odds before, but never like this. He had survived assassination attempts, uncovered a political conspiracy, and was now caught between warring factions on a planet that didn't just see him as an outsider. They saw him as a threat. Standing in the dimly lit corridor, his silver-eyed wife, Syra, watched him carefully, waiting for his next move. "The next attack won't be a warning," she had told him. John exhaled sharply. "Then I won't wait for it to come." A dangerous meeting with an old enemy. John needed to know who was behind the conspiracy, and there was only one person who could give him answers: Warlord Karax, leader of the Separatist faction. The warlord was a powerful figure among the Ziltharians, known for his hatred of humans and his desire to keep the old ways intact. If anyone wanted John dead, it was him. John made the boldest decision of his life. He sent a message to Karax, requesting a face-to-face meeting. Syra raised an eyebrow. "You're either incredibly brave or incredibly foolish." John smiled grimly. "Probably both." The warlord's domain. The meeting was set in the warlord's fortress, a towering black structure on the edge of a massive crimson desert. John arrived with only Syra at his side, his other wives forced to stay behind due to political tensions. As the heavy metal doors opened, Karax stood waiting. He was massive, 7 feet tall, with dark bronze skin, jagged armor, and piercing black eyes that burned with hatred. "So," Karax sneered, "the human prince finally shows himself." John kept his expression neutral. "I came for answers." Karax let out a deep laugh. "And you believe I owe you any?" John took a step forward. "I believe you want me dead, Karax, but the attempts on my life haven't come from you. So that means someone else is pulling the strings." The warlord's laughter stopped. A slow smile spread across his face, but it wasn't one of amusement. It was one of recognition. "You're smarter than I expected, human." Karax walked over to a holographic display, tapping a few buttons. A projection appeared, a blurry image of a hooded figure speaking to Ziltharian soldiers in secret. John's stomach twisted. "Who is that?" Karax leaned forward. "That human is the real enemy." And if you do not act fast, they will take everything from you. A choice with no good outcome. Carax turned to face John fully, crossing his massive arms. I have an offer for you, human. John tensed. He knew this wouldn't be good. The council sees you as a symbol of peace, but I see you for what you really are, a pawn in their game. John stayed silent. Carax's voice grew darker. If you truly want to survive, if you truly want to be free, then you must do the one thing that will shake this world to its core. John's fists tightened. And what's that? Carax smiled coldly. Kill the council. Dismantle the system. John froze. He had expected threats, violence, even a declaration of war. But this? Carax continued. The peace between Earth and Zilfar is an illusion. The moment you were forced into this marriage, you lost your freedom. They will never let you go. They will never let you be anything more than their puppet. But if you destroy them, you can rule this world. John's mind raced. He had spent his life as a soldier, a diplomat, a survivor, but never as a king. Why would you want me in charge? John asked. You hate humans. Carax's eyes gleamed. I hate weak rulers. You are stronger than they expected. And with my army at your side, we can reshape this world together. John exhaled slowly. He had come for answers, but instead, he was given a choice that could change the future of two civilizations. But before he could respond, an explosion rocked the fortress. A betrayal from within. John staggered back, grabbing onto a railing as fire and debris rained from the ceiling. WER, under ATTACK. A soldier yelled. Carax snarled, pulling out a massive energy blade. That was no accident. We've been betrayed. John's mind snapped into survival mode. Through the smoke, he saw figures emerging, heavily armed soldiers, their armor bearing the insignia of the Ziltharian Council. John cursed under his breath. They followed me here, he muttered. Carax turned to John, his eyes blazing with fury. This is your doing, human. Your presence has brought war to my doorstep. Before John could explain, one of the council's soldiers raised a holographic device, and a voice echoed through the battlefield. John Carter of Earth, the voice announced. By the order of the High Council of Zilfar, you are hereby declared a traitor. John's heart stopped. What? The punishment, the voice continued, is execution. John barely had time to react before the first gunfire rang out. And then, all hell broke loose. The battle for control. Explosions tore through the fortress. Carax's warriors charged into battle, clashing with the council's forces. John ducked behind cover, dodging a plasma blast. His mind was spinning. He had come here looking for answers, and now he was a wanted man. Why would the council turn on him now? Unless a terrifying thought hit him like a lightning strike. This was always the plan. The council never intended for him to survive this long. They used him, and now, with tensions high, they could eliminate him and blame it on the separatists. He was just another casualty in their political game. John gritted his teeth. No, not today. He grabbed a fallen weapon and turned to Carax. You still want to take down the council? John growled. Carax grinned ferociously. I was hoping you'd say that, human. And with that, they charged into battle together. Escape or accept. John Carter had fought battles before, but never like this. The council's soldiers swarmed the warlord's fortress, their energy weapons lighting up the darkened corridors with bright streaks of plasma. Warlord Carax's warriors returned fire, their massive blades cutting through enemies with terrifying force. And in the middle of it all was John Carter, a human diplomat who had never asked for this fight, now labeled a traitor, a target, and a key piece in an intergalactic war. His heart pounded as he ducked behind a collapsed stone pillar, dodging a burst of gunfire. He had two choices: run and try to escape this madness, or accept the role that had been forced upon him. Either way, he was out of time. Carax's ultimatum. Carax was in his element, his massive energy blade cutting through enemy lines like a storm of destruction. He fought like a man with nothing to lose, or perhaps everything to gain. John reloaded his stolen energy rifle, firing at an approaching soldier. "We're losing ground. We need an exit." Carax snarled, slamming an enemy into the ground. "There is no exit, human. We fight. We win." John gritted his teeth. "And if we lose?" Carax smirked. "Then we die warriors' deaths." John exhaled sharply. That wasn't an option. Carax's warband was strong, but outnumbered. The Council's forces weren't just attacking. They were cleansing. They wanted every separatist dead, and they wanted John erased from history. John turned to Carax. "You still want to bring down the Council?" Carax's grin widened. "Always." John's jaw tightened. "Then we need to stop fighting and start thinking." The betrayal runs deeper. John had barely finished his sentence when another explosion rocked the fortress. A massive section of the wall caved in, revealing the open night sky beyond. Through the smoke, a group of warriors in black armor entered the battlefield. And at the front of them was Nura. John's stomach twisted. His violet-skinned wife stepped forward, her glowing blue markings shimmering in the moonlight. She carried herself with the grace of a warrior, her eyes cold and sharp as they locked onto John's. "Nura," John said, his voice rough. "So it was you." She tilted her head, as if studying him. "I told you before, husband. You always have a choice." John felt his blood boil. "You tried to kill me." Nura sighed. "I tried to protect Zilfar. You were never meant to survive this long." Carax growled, raising his weapon. "You dare stand against us, daughter of the House of Night?" Nura's expression didn't change. "I stand with Zilfar, warlord." "Something you never understood." John clenched his fists. "You knew they would attack the fortress." Nura nodded. "You forced their hand. The Council is afraid of you, John. They were willing to let you play your part, but now you are too dangerous to be controlled." John exhaled slowly. He had suspected this, but hearing it confirmed made his chest tighten. "You're here to kill me," he said. Nura shook her head. "No, John. I'm here to offer you something else." John stiffened. "Come with me," Nura said. "Surrender to the Council. Accept your role. Become what they want you to be, and you will live." John felt Carax tense beside him, his rage barely contained. "You would have him bow to those tyrants." The warlord spat. Nura's eyes narrowed. "I would have him survive." John felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him. He looked at Carax, the brutal warrior who saw power as the only path forward. He looked at Nura, his own wife, who had once tried to kill him, but now offered him a way to live. Two choices. Neither one was good. The escape plan. John didn't hesitate. He threw his rifle to the ground, raising his hands as if surrendering. Nura smirked slightly, taking a step forward. That's when John grabbed a fallen enemy's pulse grenade and tossed it at her feet. The explosion wasn't deadly, but it sent Nura and her soldiers flying backward, throwing the battlefield into chaos. John grabbed Carax's shoulder. "We're leaving. Now." Carax laughed wildly. "Now that's the human spirit." They sprinted through the smoke, dodging gunfire as the battle raged behind them. John knew one thing for certain. He could never go back to the Council now. And Nura. She wasn't finished with him yet. The chase begins. John and Carax made it to an underground tunnel, a hidden escape route used by the warlord's people. It led deep into the planet's mountainous terrain, far from the reach of the Council's forces. As they moved, Carax glanced at John with something resembling respect. "You surprised me, human," he said. "I thought you would hesitate." John exhaled sharply. "I don't have time for hesitation anymore." Carax grinned. "Good. Then you're ready for the next step." John frowned. "Next step." Carax's eyes darkened. We take the fight to them. John stopped walking. You mean? Carax nodded. The council wants you dead, human. The only way to stop running is to make them fear you instead. John felt the weight of those words settle in his chest. He had spent his whole life avoiding war, avoiding unnecessary battles. But the truth was, war had already found him. And now, he had no choice but to fight back. The final stand. John Carter had stopped running. For days, he had been a pawn in the Ziltharian Council's political games. They had trapped him in a marriage he never wanted. They had branded him a traitor when he refused to comply. They had tried to kill him when he became too unpredictable. And now, they were going to pay for it. John stood inside Carax's hidden war camp, deep in the mountain caverns of Zilfar. Thousands of battle-hardened warriors surrounded him, their glowing red eyes watching him with cautious respect. Carax grinned, his massive arms crossed. So, human, are you ready to become the monster they fear? John exhaled. He wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. He was fighting to end this war before it destroyed both Zilfar and Earth. But to do that, he needed a plan that no one would see coming, unraveling the Council's secrets. John sat in the dimly lit war chamber, studying a holographic map of the Council's capital city. It was a fortress, with layers of energy shields, anti-air defenses, and thousands of elite soldiers guarding its walls. Attacking head-on was suicide. John rubbed his temples. We need to get inside the Council's chambers without triggering planetary defenses. Carax scoffed. There is no way inside. The Council is protected by an energy dome powered by a planetary core relay. John's eyes narrowed. Wait, a core relay? Carax shrugged. It's what gives them their endless power. It's buried deep beneath the palace, impossible to destroy. John's mind raced. The Council's strength came from that energy relay. Without it, their shields would fail, their technology would crumble, and their hold on the planet would collapse. John smirked. Then we're not attacking the palace, he said. We're going underground. Carax's eyes widened. Then he laughed loudly. You are insane, human. John grinned. Yeah, well, that's what makes us dangerous. A risky alliance. There was just one problem. They had no way of accessing the underground tunnels leading to the core relay. But John knew someone who did, and he was not happy about it. Meeting with Nira again. Under the cover of darkness, John snuck into the neutral zone, a lawless city outside the Council's control. He waited in a dimly lit alleyway, his pulse steady but his senses on high alert. Then he heard footsteps. Nira stepped out of the shadows, her violet skin glowing softly in the moonlight. She wasn't alone. Two heavily armed warriors flanked her, watching John like predators watching prey. John kept his hands relaxed, even though every instinct screamed at him to grab his weapon. I see you're still alive, Nira said smoothly. John smirked, disappointed. She chuckled, shaking her head, amused. John cut to the chase. I need access to the underground tunnels beneath the palace. Nira's expression didn't change, but John saw a flicker of interest in her eyes. Ah, she said softly. You plan to take out the core relay. John's silence was all the confirmation she needed. Nira sighed. John, you're trying to break something that has kept Zilthar united for 1,000 years. John's jaw clenched. No, I'm breaking something that's keeping your people enslaved. For a moment, Nira didn't speak. Then, slowly, she reached into her cloak and pulled out a small silver device. This is an access key to the tunnels, she said. It will get you in. But after that, you're on your own. John took the device. Why are you helping me? Nira's eyes darkened. Because you were never supposed to survive this long. And now, I want to see how far you'll go. John nodded once. Then, without another word, he disappeared into the night. The infiltration begins. John and a team of Carax's best warriors move through the underground tunnels, their footsteps silent against the damp stone. The deeper they went, the hotter it became, the heat from the planet's core intensifying. Finally, they reached a massive vault door, pulsing with golden energy. John placed the access key on the console. The door hissed, unlocking with a deep rumble. They stepped inside and walked straight into a trap. A dozen council enforcers stood waiting, weapons raised. John's heart pounded. And at the center of them, smiling coldly, was Syra, his silver-eyed wife. The council's countermove. Syra tilted her head, watching John with amusement. "Did you really think we wouldn't predict this, husband?" John gritted his teeth. "You betrayed me." She chuckled. "No, John. I simply played the game better than you did." Carax growled, stepping forward. "You stand with the tyrants." Syra's eyes glowed like ice. "I stand with the future." John's mind raced. The council had known his plan from the start. Which meant, before Syra could give the order to kill them, John moved. He grabbed a plasma grenade from his belt, slammed his fist into the wall, and triggered an emergency failsafe he had set before entering. The tunnels exploded. The collapse of the old order. John rolled across the ground, shielding his head as fire and debris rained from above. Carax roared in fury, grabbing John by the arm and dragging him toward an exit as the entire chamber collapsed behind them. John's plan had worked. The core relay was destroyed. The council's palace shields fell instantly. Across the planet, power grids shut down, defenses failed, and the people saw the truth. The council was not invincible. For the first time in centuries, the Ziltharian people had a chance to be free. But the war wasn't over yet. The final battle looms. John stood at the edge of the ruined tunnels, looking at the burning city in the distance. Carax clapped him on the shoulder. "You have done the impossible, human." John exhaled sharply. Not yet. Because now, with the council weakened, they would strike back harder than ever. And John would have to finish what he started. Once and for all. The ultimate choice. The planet burned. Smoke rose from the council's shattered palace, the once imposing fortress now a crumbling ruin. The skies were filled with streaks of fire, the remnants of ships that had been shot down in the battle. Across Zilfar, the echoes of gunfire and explosions filled the air as the final phase of the war for freedom unfolded. And in the center of it all stood John Carter. He had been a diplomat, a prisoner, a pawn in an ancient game of power and deception. But now he was something else entirely. He was the deciding force that would shape the future of this planet forever. And for the first time, he wasn't running from it. He was embracing it. The War Council. John stood inside a makeshift war chamber, a dimly lit underground bunker where the leaders of the rebellion had gathered. Carax sat at the head of the table, his massive arms crossed, a deep scowl on his face. Around them, Ziltharian warriors, rogue strategists, and defected soldiers listened intently. John's voice was calm, but firm. "We've crippled the Council's power. Their shields are down, their military is fractured, and the people are starting to rise up against them." Carax grunted, "But they still hold the inner sanctum. Their most loyal enforcers remain, and their leader, the High Chancellor, is still alive." John's jaw tightened. The High Chancellor, the one who had been pulling the strings all along. The one who had wanted John dead from the moment he arrived. He clenched his fists. "Then we end this tonight." The warriors let out a roar of agreement, weapons raised. But before they could finalize their battle plan, a messenger burst into the chamber, panting. "My lords," the soldier gasped. "The council, they've made a counteroffer." John frowned. "A counteroffer?" The soldier nodded. "They request an audience. They wish to negotiate a surrender." A heavy silence filled the room. John knew better than to trust the council. But something felt different this time, and when he heard who was delivering the message, his blood ran cold. "Their messenger is Syra," the soldier added. "John's silver-eyed wife." The one who had betrayed him. The meeting of enemies. John entered the ruined palace, walking through the wreckage of a once great empire. The ceiling was shattered. The floors cracked, the grand halls filled with smoke and bloodstains. And in the throne room, standing alone, was Syra. She was dressed in black ceremonial robes, her silver eyes as cold as ever. John stopped a few feet away, arms crossed. "You've got 5 minutes. Talk." Syra tilted her head slightly. "You still don't trust me, do you, husband?" John let out a bitter laugh. "You betrayed me. Twice. What do you think?" Syra's lips curled in something between amusement and sadness. "If I truly wanted you dead, John, you wouldn't be standing here." John clenched his jaw. "Then why are we here?" Syra's expression hardened. "Because the High Chancellor wants to speak with you. Personally." John's stomach tightened. "You're lying," he said. Syra shook her head. "He's desperate. He knows he's lost. He also knows that if Carax takes control, there will be no peace, only endless war." John stared at her, trying to read the truth behind her words. Finally, he sighed. "Fine. Take me to him." Syra nodded once. And together, they walked into the final confrontation. The High Chancellor's last offer. The High Chancellor sat in the dark remains of his command chamber, his once pristine robes torn and stained. His golden skin was pale, his once proud posture hunched in defeat. John didn't feel pity. This man had tried to erase him, to use him as a political puppet, to end his life when he became too unpredictable. John stood firm. "You wanted to talk. Talk." The Chancellor exhaled. "You've proven yourself, John Carter. Against all odds, you have survived. You have turned the people against us. You have shaken the foundation of centuries-old rule." He looked up, his glowing blue eyes tired. "But what happens now?" John narrowed his gaze. "You surrender. That's what happens now." The Chancellor let out a dry laugh. "Is that what Carax told you? That once we fall, there will be peace?" John hesitated. The Chancellor leaned forward. "Carax is a warrior, John. He doesn't want peace. He wants conquest. He will use this rebellion to take control. And when he does, he will turn Zilfar into an empire of blood and war." John gritted his teeth. He wanted to dismiss it, to call it a lie. But something in his gut told him there was truth in the Chancellor's words. The Chancellor continued, "We can end this war, John. Right here, right now. You have their loyalty. You can lead them." John's breath hitched. "What are you saying?" The Chancellor's voice was calm, final. "I am offering you the throne." A silence filled the chamber. John felt his heart pounding. "You want me to rule?" he asked, disbelief thick in his voice. The Chancellor nodded. "You are not Siltharian. You are not bound by old grudges, old vendettas. You have the power to unite this world, John Carter, to bring peace that neither Carax nor I could ever achieve." John felt the weight of his entire journey press down on him. From prisoner to husband, from hunted to leader. And now he stood on the precipice of becoming the ruler of an entire world. A choice that would define the future. One path led to war, with Carax. The other led to power, with the Chancellor's surrender. And then there was a third path. A path that no one expected. John Carter inhaled deeply. And he made his final choice. The final twist, John's choice. John turned to Syra, his silver-eyed wife, the woman who had betrayed him and yet somehow never truly left his side. He turned to the Chancellor, the man who had tried to manipulate him but was now giving him the keys to power. And he thought of Carax, the warrior who wanted to burn the old world to the ground. John exhaled, and then he smiled. "You all thought I was a pawn," he said, his voice steady. "But the thing about humans is, we never stay where you put us." He pulled out a small detonator. The Chancellor's eyes widened. "What are you?" John pressed the button, and the entire palace exploded. Epilogue. A new beginning. The war ended in fire and ash. The Chancellor was dead. Carax's forces were scattered. And in the chaos, the people of Zilthar rose up, not under a tyrant, not under a warlord, but under themselves. John Carter disappeared that night. Some say he died in the explosion. Others say he escaped into the stars, never to be seen again. But one thing was certain: he had rewritten history, and Zilthar would never be the same again.